Hi there, gorgeous. Hope you're having a fabulous day. If you are new to the channel, I'd first like to say welcome to you. Thank you so much for being here. I make videos like this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you'd like to be notified of new videos in the future, please subscribe. And thank you so much in advance if you do. In today's video, I'm featuring 5 brand new foundations for you from the brands PUR, Maybelline, Juvia's Place, Uoma, and Pretty Vulgar. I'll be showing you up-close applications with each of these foundations, thoroughly reviewing each one, and also including a wear test so you can see how they wear through a 10 to 12 hour day and find out if any of these may be right for you. Now, for reference, I have an oily complexion and I live in Florida, for those who do not know, so I'm always looking for foundations that can not only hold up to my oily skin, but also the heat and humidity that I live in on a daily basis. For all the wear tests that I'm showing you in today's video, I did wear a primer on one side of my face, and that is the left side of my face as you're looking at the screen. So for all the wear tests today, on the left side of my face, I used the Bare Minerals Primetime Primer. And for all the wear tests I'm showing you here today, I did use the same powder to set each and every one of them, and that was the Coty Airspun Translucent Powder. And many of you know that I use this one all the time, but I use it specifically because it does not compensate for bad foundations. If a foundation is good, the powder wears really well. If a foundation is bad, the powder wears real badly. So now that you know all that, let's start with the very first foundation, and we'll talk about Juvia's Place, because that is one that has been very highly requested by so many of you. The shade that I'm showing you here is Isla 730. Now, unfortunately, I had to wait a couple weeks to get this because initially the shade was completely sold out, and it was hard to determine which shade I was when I went to buy this foundation because you're doing it online. There's no way to really swatch it. So the shade that I got is a little lighter than what I would normally get for myself, but please ignore that. We're testing formula here, and I just wanted to let you know that up front. 42 different shades to choose from, so pretty good shade selection here. Now, this is a full coverage foundation. It is a velvety matte finish, according to the bottle. And it says it's suitable for all skin types, including sensitive and oily skin. So I applied it on one side of my face with a sponge, and I really did not like the results that I was getting with it. I didn't like how it was blending in the skin, or I should say the lack of blending into the skin. It was sitting on top, and it was emphasizing my pores a lot more than I would have liked to have seen. And I didn't feel like it was that full coverage either, because I had a red mark up on my cheek, and the first layer didn't cover that red mark at all. I actually had to go back with a small amount of a second layer and apply it over that red mark, and then it disappeared. So I know I'm being picky, but just keep that in mind. So I thought maybe the sponge had something to do with the foundation and the way it was sitting on the skin. So on the other side of my face, I applied it with a brush. And it was a little bit better with a brush. It blended in slightly better to the skin. But after I had finished applying it, when you look up close at the skin, like I'm showing you here, it was still sitting there. It was still emphasizing the pores. It gave me texture on my skin that I didn't have. And didn't like this one at all from the initial application with it. And when I was wearing this one all day that day, when I would look in the mirror at certain points throughout the day, I was like, whoa, because it's so light. My face was white, girl. Anyway, I wore this one for a straight 11 hours on the day that I was testing it. While I appreciated that this one did not have any shine breakthrough on the skin by the end of the day, what I didn't like was how my skin looked like up close. That sitting on top of the skin look that it had after initial application got worse by the end of the day, and it really was giving me unnecessary texture on my skin, very unflattering, and it was one that I could not wait to wash off at the end of the day. It was horrible stuff. It also moved around my nose an awful lot, did not stay put there for one bit, and I don't feel like the primer helped this one at all either. And actually the next day I tried applying it with my fingers to see if that would make a difference in how it was blending in, and it looked worse, if that's even possible. So this is one that I would say, personally, I don't recommend it, and I'm not ever going to use it again in the future. It's not a good foundation. in my opinion. Next foundation that we'll talk about here is the Maybelline Dream Urban Cover. This is another full coverage foundation, but when I applied it, I felt like it was more medium coverage. And if you apply too much of this foundation, it starts to look like it's sitting on top of the skin. And it's another one that can be a little difficult to blend in. And this is one that I would recommend applying in layers too. Thin, light layers if you want to go fuller coverage with it. What I did notice is that the coverage was really nice if you applied a small amount at a time. And the color match was spot on, actually. I was surprised to see that for Maybelline because a lot of times in the past when I've tried Maybelline foundations, the color is a little off for me. On the day that I tested this one out, I wore it for a straight 10 hours, and at the end of the day, my face was starting to look a little patchy and uneven. The foundation had also moved around my nose horribly. Now, if you look to the side where I had applied the primer, that did hold up a little better compared to the side where I did not have a primer applied. But if you still look real closely at my skin on the primer side, it looks texturized and uneven in some spots. So the primer didn't exactly save the foundation that day. While it did help to stop it from moving around like it had on the other side, it still didn't look pretty. And so for that reason alone, this is not one that I would wear again in the future. It's not one that I recommend for those of us with oily skin at all. Let's talk about something positive. I gave you 2 negative ones to start. I promise there's some good ones here. Okay, the next one that I have to share with you is from the PUR line. This is the 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie Long Wear Foundation and Concealer. Yeah, you heard me right. They're saying that you can use this one as both a foundation and a concealer. So I did test it out both of those ways. One of the most impressive things to me about this foundation is that they offer 100 shades to choose from. Unfortunately, they're not on Ulta's website. On Ulta's website, they only offer 40 shades. So you have to go to PUR's website directly to access the full 100 shade range. But it's pretty awesome that a foundation is being offered in that many colors. Now, this is a full coverage foundation. It is very thick and richly pigmented, so a little bit of this will go in a long way. And if you apply too much of it, I'll just forewarn you now, it can start to look cakey on the skin and unflattering. So it really is important to use a small amount of this on application. It blended in beautifully. I didn't have any struggles with getting this to apply, and I felt like the results were absolutely gorgeous with this one. And initially, I did really like it as a concealer too, and I felt like it provided excellent coverage under the eyes. So I wore this one for a straight 10 hours on the day that I tested it, and by the end of the day, I have to tell you, I was simply amazed that there was no shine breakthrough whatsoever, both on the side with the primer and the side without the primer. Simply gorgeous results. It looks like I had just applied it. Now, when you look at my under eye area though, unfortunately, it did not wear well at all. There was creasing and my under eye area was looking very unflattering by the end of the day. So while some products can multitask, this is not one of them. I do prefer this more so as a foundation as opposed to a concealer, and I don't feel like it really functions well as a concealer. So for me, I'm going to be using it in the future solely as a foundation. If you had a different experience with using it as a concealer, feel free to share yours below also. I would love to hear how you were able to make it work for you. But I will just say that I love this stuff. This is exactly how a foundation should be. Next foundation I have to share with you is from Uoma Beauty, and this is their Say What Weightless Soft Matte Hydrating Foundation. This line gives you 51 different shades to choose from. Just like the PUR foundation I just talked about, this one also has a very intense pigment with it, so a little bit of the foundation goes a long way. It's a very rich foundation, and if you apply too much, it can again start to look rather cakey on the skin, but it was very easy to blend in and the appearance was beautiful once you did blend it into the skin. Now, I personally did not care for this scent. It has a floral scent to it, but it's rather strong and it does tend to stay with you all day too. So when you turn your head, you can smell it, and that threw me off all day. That was the only thing I really didn't care for with this foundation initially. But despite that minor gripe of mine, it's just a personal thing, I felt like the results were really beautiful and the coverage was equally gorgeous. Now, I wore this one for a straight 12 hours on the day that I tested it, and by the end of the day, it looked amazing. on both sides. No shine breakthrough whatsoever. The foundation didn't fall apart once. It didn't move around the face. It didn't look patchy, uneven. It was simply flawless. So this is another one that I highly recommend. I was very pleased with this one. Last foundation I have to review for you comes from the Pretty Vulgar line. Never tried anything from them, so this was my first experience. This is their Cool AF Lava Water Foundation. This one does not have a good shade range to choose from. There are only 15 shades offered with this foundation. The description of this really intrigued me, and I'll just read to you here what it says on the box. It says it's formulated with detoxifying charcoal powder and hydrating moringa butter that will help to cover imperfections and even out your complexion. They also have exotic volcanic lava water that is sourced from ancient Jeju Island that delivers antioxidants, minerals, and nutrients that nourish the skin, keeping it supple and strong. They say it's good for normal, combination, and oily skin types. I personally thought that because it had charcoal powder in it, it would be great for those of us with oily skin, because that's typically something that will help to mattify the skin. And that's why I wanted to try this foundation out. Now, it is full coverage. It gives you a matte finish on the skin, despite what the name says, because I initially thought that it was a water-based foundation based on the title. It's actually a silicone-based foundation. It has a very thick consistency like the others I've talked about here today, so a little bit goes a long way. You really don't need much for application. Unfortunately, again, I felt like the shade that I chose was a little too light for my complexion initially, but then after I allowed it to sink into the skin a little bit more, I felt like it oxidized and looked a little bit more normal on me by the end of the day. So it will oxidize for those who may have questions about that quality with this foundation. But I felt like the results were beautiful and the initial application was very impressive. And after wearing this one for a straight 12 hours, I was really impressed to see that I did not have any shine breakthrough on my face whatsoever on both sides. And I really feel like it's that charcoal powder that they talked about in the description with this one. But what threw me off with this was how patchy it looked on my face. It looked like it was breaking apart on the skin, especially in the areas of the face where you have a lot of movement. So where a lot of your facial expressions are based, your mouth, your nose, your forehead, the foundation was settling into lines and it was looking very unflattering in those areas. And I feel like this is going to sound funny, but I feel like if you put this foundation on, you didn't move your face at all day, it would look gorgeous by the end of the day. But that's not what we want from a that's not what we want from a foundation. We want something that's going to be flexible and move with our face. And I don't feel like this one does that. It's very odd. I've not seen that in a while from a foundation. And so I tried the next day applying it with a brush as opposed to a sponge to see if that would make a difference in the flexibility of it, and it really didn't. It looked the same even with a brush the next day. Unfortunately, I don't have that wear test to show to you, but it looked very similar to the one that I showed you with the sponge. It just broke apart in this area of the face. So while I loved it initially, and I love that I had no shine breakthrough with it, I don't feel like it wears well in terms of flexibility on the face. And so for that reason, this is not one that I will use in the future and not one that I can recommend to you. By the way, I've read your comments and I know a lot of you would like an updated curly hair routine, which I am working on for you. I'm still testing some new products that I've been using over the past month or so to get a really good feel for them before making that video. So that video will probably be coming out the second week of July as of right now. But thank you so much for all of your wonderful compliments. I have changed some things up, so there are some different things I'm doing now compared to what I used to do. And I think that's why my curl pattern has been looking a little different too. But let me know your favorite foundation of the moment. Have you tried any of the ones that I tested for you in today's video? Would love to hear your thoughts on any of these also. And if you do comment on any of the foundations that I reviewed here today, also please include your complexion type and any other factors that may help others who may be reading your comment as to whether or not it may be right for them. But would love to hear your experiences with these also. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.